everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are really excited to put on this event for everybody. Like Frances said, my name is Betsy Carnahan. I am a library assistant here at Kishwaukee College. This event is in association with the American Library Association's COVID Library Relief Grant. As one might assume of a library employee, I am a lifelong lover of books and of storytelling. It is this love of storytelling, as well as the power to affect positive change that comes from the sharing of and hearing of stories that compelled me to put this event together today. Whether we heard family stories around the dinner table, were told bedtime stories, or listened intently to our grandparents' memories, stories help us to learn about life. They inspire us and they motivate us. Continuing to share our stories helps us to continue to learn about life. And here to help us do just that today is Jeff Foster. Jeff's the owner of Common Grounds Cafe in Sycamore, Illinois. He says his story is one about family, faith, community, entrepreneurship, and believing that everybody needs and deserves a space to get inspired. As a lifelong learner, Jeff has worn many hats. He was raised in Chicago and has a graphic design degree from Robert Morris College. He says this was the starting point that eventually led him into small business. He also spent time studying at Moody and Ashland seminaries, and this gave him a greater insight into human behavior. And it also took him into the arena of youth ministry and nonprofits. Today, he's an entrepreneur as owner of Common Grounds Cafe. Jeff wants to utilize Common Grounds Cafe not only as a cafe, but also as a space to develop a community arts center. He wants this space to be a safe, inspiring place for creative youth. He believes entrepreneurship and youth empowerment is a cultural imperative. And with that, Jeff and I are going to have a short conversation before we open up to the participants for Q&A, and we hope that you will join us and engage with us for that part of the conversation. So with that, Jeff, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Betsy, for that humbling introduction. I wasn't raised to think it's okay to talk about myself very much, so this is a hard position to be in. Everything you said resonates with my, I guess, the big picture here is vision. I think even as a young man growing up on the south side of Chicago, I was inspired by, my parents' journey and transition from, my dad, particularly from rural Mississippi, and facing, Jim Crow and all sorts of racial, intolerance. And he dreamed of, maybe a much smaller dream than I've had as a young man. But he wanted to see his family prosper in Chicago and wherever we ended up. So yeah, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I had the luxury of maybe dreaming a little more than my older siblings. And for some reason, my parents spread us out pretty far. My next oldest brother is 6 years older, sister 10 years older, next oldest sister 15 years older, and then my oldest sibling is now 67. So I forget how many years apart we are, but I'm 50. I've never excelled in math, so maybe someone else can help me out with that. But they're all hardworking. We were raised with a strong work ethic. That's one thing that it took a while, I think, maybe for me, but I work hard, and I like to think eventually I'll be able to play hard. I am starting to think about retirement. My wife and I have 3 kids. We moved here to DeKalb about 7 years ago, and my dream was really to take everything that had been, that I have learned as a graphic designer, working in missions, nonprofit arenas, and create something that the community needed wherever we wound up planting our feet. We chose DeKalb particularly because of the campus, because of NIU, and just the culture around NIU, which is a very interesting culture. Spent time working as a youth and children's pastor in Oswego that first couple of years as I put together the proposal and the business plan for Common Grounds. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about families and a different environment than the way that I grew up and the way people see things out here in Kishwaukee area / DeKalb County. Small business is important to a lot of people. Libraries and books and agriculture and the sciences are very important to people out here, and education in general. So looking back, I would say that the expectations weren't very high. We didn't come from a highly academic family. I'm only the second person with a college degree in my family, in my my immediate family. So did I feel pressure? Not really. I just, my mom, she's sort of jokingly said, just don't end up in jail, So was there something in particular that you said? I may have missed something from your introduction.
No, I don't think so. If that wraps up what you would like to say right now, then I do have some other questions for you.
Okay. Yeah, let's just go forward and I'm sure more will come out.
Absolutely. So you said, you and I have had a few conversations leading up to this event today. You said as a young man, you did have the chance to dream big for yourself. So when you were a young man and you were fantasizing about the things you wanted to do and the things you wanted to be, what were some of those early ambitions that you had?
Well, as far back as I can remember, and being the youngest in my family, I was always looking to be noticed. I was looking for someone to encourage, my dreams, and art was definitely the vehicle that I used to gain attention and recognition. And I guess, when I at the beginning I said vision is married to passion. If you don't have, I don't feel like anything worth accomplishing in this world is worth it without a passion for it. It certainly didn't work for me. Things, just finding a job wasn't enough for me, So comic books, drawing all day in class. I mean, I was that kid. And I was also the kid raising his hand because I was very curious and I wanted questions to be answered. And I think that is something that maybe differentiated me from, my siblings. They tended to be more, straight shooters, keep it simple. The jobs that they went after were very safe jobs, whereas I had this desire to be an artist, and I didn't know if that would take me to advertising or fine art. But I had a really great experience with a teacher in high school. Finally, junior year, it took that long. Actually, that's the first time I seriously painted anything, was junior year in high school. And all that time before, I was just drawing and sketching but she noticed me in a study hall, and with a simple pat on the back said, you have a lot of talent. You have something special. I'm going to start a program for artists here at Bogan High School. That's my high school. And it was like a life-saving statement, literally, because at that time, a lot of my friends were involved in gangs. A lot of my friends were either just, partying too much or just really not concerned with, I had a few friends who were athletes, and it just seemed like the opportunities were pretty narrow. I wasn't a good athlete, and I wasn't a good math student, and math was a big deal. people either recognized you as smart if you could do math, or if you just, had high test scores, and I had neither. So that opened the door for me to think bigger. And that was the first time I visited the Art Institute, north side of Chicago, where it's like night and day compared to the south side in terms of artistic appreciation, galleries, and first time I did stained glass art. And then one of the things that maybe affected my future was visiting coffee shops and seeing artwork on the walls of coffee shops and musicians playing in coffee shops. And so that seed was planted. So yeah, I think the big step for me was realizing that I could do something even though I didn't fit into those narrow lenses.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
Did you have a certain moment when it crystallized in your mind that you just knew this was it, that you were going to be an entrepreneur, that this was where you are comfortable and this is where you are your best self? Did you have one moment or a series of moments where you knew that you were an entrepreneur?
A series of moments, and I would say that came through influences along the way as I attended college at Robert Morris. Robert Morris is a business college, so there was a lot of talk of business acumen and small business in particular. And I had some great instructors, and I hit my stride. I was getting high scores for the first time in my life, and I was at the cutting edge of graphic design. There was no graphic design degree at the school until the group that I graduated with. So I learned all of the software and all of the technology early on, and I could see the ways that you can create something from scratch. A lot of these things were new. These were new tools and new enterprise. The old businesses, printing, advertising, marketing, they were changing. And it happened again in the 90s with the web, So I've had to kind of reinvent myself and kind of think fluidly about what I could do and do differently to stay in the market. I would say if I retired from my design career, it probably happened around 90, 98, 97, when I started working for a nonprofit that still exists. It's called By the Hand Club in Chicago. I had started attending Moody Church, and I was actually volunteering for them, and they needed someone who could teach art. And I started working with kids there. The program officially started around 2001. And, I would say for me, it was seeing the work ethic of the people who were now doing what you might consider social entrepreneurship, sparked something for me. Giving back, reading to kids, encouraging them to care about their schoolwork. That's what that program was about. I forgot, in our earlier conversations, I forgot about By the Hand Club, and it was a big deal. So yeah, I started to think about, well, what can we do that is part business and part social justice? Mm-hmm. I think it started right in around that time period.
Great. You brought up social entrepreneurship. Do you consider yourself, Jeff, to be a social entrepreneur?
Yeah. I don't deliberately attempt to do that. It just kind of bubbles out of what I enjoy. And I don't think I'd want a business that didn't touch people's lives in the way that would be transformative and encourage others to dream bigger, Sure. So that's what Common Grounds, encompasses for me. I didn't have the skills to start a coffee shop, but I had the daringness to put together some different ideas. And one of the key people who introduced me to entrepreneurship and micro business was at a company I was working for, later in a part-time way as a publishing company. And he was on the mission board for an Indian mission agency. So he was doing his printing business and creating books for people. He had me designing cover designs for him. And all the while I was attending college, seminary, because at that point I was thinking, okay, I'm supposed to be a pastor. this is what my life's about, Through that relationship, I got to visit India, and I was doing donor support tools for them. One of the big things there was learning how to communicate better. I hadn't really taken my writing very seriously, but I learned to. I really, started to hone, getting communication out better for them and just for myself. Started writing, but yeah, in India in particular, there's a lot of people who want to make money, but they don't want to leave the community behind. There's a kind of intrinsic social connection. They believe in ancestral obligation to, I earn this much. Well, it's for my people group, and I think that translated for me into looking at the Black experience in America and like, well, what am I doing to raise up the level of marginalized people in my community, And I even thought about at one point staying in India because I loved that aspect of taking a business model and using it to better the entire community. So yeah, I would say that's where a lot of that started for me. And then I met the pastor of the church in Oswego. He was very big about helping in his hometown of Milwaukee. He became a youth pastor there, and he brought some of those ideas as we worked together. And he helped me put together the plan for Common Grounds.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you said that in the past and still currently, you'd love to utilize Common Grounds Cafe as a space to develop a community arts center for creative youth. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that, why you want to do that and why you think that is important?
Well, so we're at our 5th year, and I would say at the height of the pandemic, I started to realize, my kids are teenagers, particularly my young daughter, my oldest daughter, is prolific as a painter. And I looked around the community and I realized, okay, there are some programs in the local schools, but there's nothing that like some of the things I saw on the north side of Chicago, empowerment programs, enrichment programs. I think it may be having to do with, people don't consider this a city. And there's a little bit of a more me and mine mentality. It's like, this is my little, we stick together, and there's not a lot of cohesive working together. That's my estimation of it. So I wanted to create something, using this platform that would benefit youth in DeKalb, something that would even draw together maybe youth in the county, Sycamore, and all the way out towards Chabonneau and Kirkland. And, we have a lot of creativity in a small demographic area. And, one of the things that I noticed that it was that by being in downtown DeKalb, it was like I was at the hub of all of these folk who were coming. And my kids being in all the schools here in DeKalb, I figured, well, we can start off by having something for them and their creative friends, and use that as a way to influence the rest of the community around us. So I made an investment when Black Lives Matter started to become news. My daughter had done a painting of George Floyd, and I started to show that we did some prints and put it in the coffee shop, and people really wanted that picture, and they really wanted to know about her. And I said, well, she comes from a situation where both her parents are motivated to help her have a career in the arts. I said, well, what about the kids who don't? who don't have that kind of support. So that was pretty much the catalyst for starting what I want to have as a consider it Common Grounds Community Arts Center, or Cg4. Because 4 areas, design and publishing and visual art, music, all of the arts kind of in one place. So we're still, at a point now, because we had to relocate. Our initial plan was a larger space. Now we're in a smaller space in Sycamore. So yeah, I'm trying to, at this point, network, and a few bright spots have been connecting with schools, in our new location. And our grand opening back in October, a bunch of DeKalb High School students brought their work, and we hung it in the shop. And a lot of parents came to see their kids' work hanging in a coffee shop. So that's a starting point.
Absolutely, absolutely. So speaking of young people, and you have a wonderful vision for things, and we see places like this that you're speaking about oftentimes in the city. You've lived in the city. I lived in the city for a few years, and it was relatively common to see spaces like that you are envisioning for your space now in more urban places. And it would just be absolutely wonderful to have a space like that out here in DeKalb.
Yes.
So speaking to DeKalb and Sycamore and Kishwaukee College and all of these communities, what do you want these communities to look like? What do you want your Cg4 community to look like? What do you want community to be like for your kids when they get older, and for generations that are coming up right now?
Yeah, I would love to see. So just because it's starting with Common Grounds doesn't mean that Common Grounds can facilitate everything. I would like to see more partnerships, and people can, we can do events here. We can, promote. Part of my background is promotion, so I want to get to a place where I can help promote local talent, young artists. But then you can go, let's say, to DeKalb Library. You can go to Sycamore Library. You can go to, other businesses in the community, and their work is featured. Maybe it's a marketing piece, that a ninth grader did. There's no reason not to support local talent, and especially at a young age. A lot of times I think kids feel, from listening to them talk about it, they feel like they have to leave the area. And I certainly did. I didn't want to stay in Chicago because most of the creativity that we admire seems to come from both coasts. And there's no reason for that. We have plenty to offer here in the Midwest. So I'd love to see that. Big things can happen in small places. And, we don't have the largest population, but I think we have a lot of heart and spirit in this community. So I'd love to see, I get excited looking at young people's work and what they're going to do with the tools that they have available to them. Things that I would have dreamt of, iPad. I see kids drawing on their iPad, and it's like, man, if I had that in 7th grade,
Right.
I wouldn't have lost all my artwork. I might have it saved somehow,
Right. Right. Great. So Jeff, you talked a little bit before about reinvention and restarting, and that brings me to one of the last things I want to chat with you about before we open it up to the participants for Q&A. Let's talk about COVID.
Okay. We'll go back to COVID. Oh no.
And just tell me, what has happened with your cafe during these COVID times? How have you adjusted, and what have you learned?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. I mean, I'd say it was a turning point, whether the business would be sustainable or not. A great outpouring of support came during COVID. We were one of the few places in downtown DeKalb where people could still connect, even if it were just briefly, mask, wearing it at 6 feet, apart. People came to Common Grounds. They passed books to one another. They had quick conversations over coffee or whatever. And it was just a warm time in a very bad, situation. And then personally for me, the effect that COVID had on my family, on my children. So my kids are now senior in high school, sophomore, and my youngest is a seventh grader. And they lost over a year of serious time in school and connecting to their peers and developing, And that was one of the things that alerted me. I said, we need to do something as a community. It shouldn't take a pandemic for us to care about what's going to happen to these kids. How are they going to develop? So that's where the initiative started. I called it Cg4 Arts Initiative because we need to work together as a community for this. And in terms of business, I realized that I have a specific reason for being in DeKalb. I have a platform where I can work with other businesses, influence them, and encourage and support people in the community to work together. I can be that kind of, medium, so to speak. So that was one of the things that prompted me to look at a larger space and more opportunity to make community more effective at Common Grounds. I also learned that, I need to, really change some of my foundational, business strategies. We were actually working under a nonprofit when we started, and it was time to move away from that. Some of the relationships that were being hindered by having a religious entity attached to our brand, So we're officially an LLC. We operate as a family-owned business now, independent small business. So I think that's healthier for us. There was a lot of pressure to do religious activities at Common Grounds that deviated from my vision for what we should be. I want it to be inclusive and complementary to the community around us, and still work with churches, obviously, and other organizations. So those were turning points for me. We've streamlined. The business is a lot. I can do mostly everything alone if I have to, because I had to learn how to do that. I don't like it. I'm hoping I'll be able to hire soon, but realistically, we just don't have the funds at the moment. We did early this year. We were doing really well. We came back strong, and that's, I felt like we could do some amazing new things. But this is where we are now.
So Jeff, one more question and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Okay. Sure.
What's the best advice you got, or what advice would you give to a young, aspiring, not necessarily young, because we have students of all ages. So what advice would you give to an aspiring college student?
Well, I would go back to my initial statement. You need a vision and you need passion. And without those two components, you'll either be following, like I did for many years. I worked behind the scenes as a graphic artist, and I had these ideas and no one seemed to care and want to listen to them, That's if you want to be an entrepreneur. I really think that's a good starting point. And find some people who, it's really hard, I think, to find like-minded friends or colleagues. We all need, people who are wanting to invest in us personally, and we should do, likewise. So I think community starts with us. Who are your big three people that you can talk to, that you can, maybe they're not best friends, but they're the people who your go-to people, coaches. People pay for that, for coaches right. and counselors. And I mean, sometimes there are wonderful people right around us who we interact with, and we need to move past well, I don't really want to be friends with that person. Well, maybe there's more to it than that, you know. So I would say as a young person, look at that. And then as far as education is concerned, I mean, you know, for me, I wasn't encouraged to go to college as much as I felt like there was so much I wanted to learn. And so my desire to learn drew me to higher education. Um, and it's better to, if looking back, I mean, it was much better for me to at least take the risk of learning and spending spending the time and money learning something that then, you know, I use everything now. I didn't know what I would be doing 30 years ago, you know, but it all works, you know. It all has a reason, you know, behind it. I try to encourage that to my kids. You know, they're in high school, they're learning a lot of stuff they don't want to, you know, learn. And I'm saying, but you don't know what you're going to need. I use everything now. Yeah.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are going to open up the floor for Q&A. Francis mentioned before, you can either use the raise your hand icon to ask questions, or you can type it into the chat box, whatever you prefer. So do we have any questions from anybody?
I see Angela M.
Yes. So Angela's asking who your top 3 writers or authors are.
Oh, okay. One of my favorite is Stephen King. I guess he'd be my number one, even as a young person. Neil Gaiman is current. They're kind of in the same, you know, fantasy genre. And then there's an author named C.S. Lewis who writes a lot of different things. He writes fantasy, but he also writes theological and religious things. And you know, I've always been very interested in mythology, and he touches on some of those things in his writings, particularly When We Had Faces. It's one of my favorite books, and Mere Christianity. So those are my top 3.
And we
Let's
have
see,
another
Carol.
question. Yeah, Carol says that your website mentions the Set Free Movement USA. Are you still affiliated with that organization? And if you are not, do you partner with others?
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention Set Free Movement. So we have the same relationship we've always had. They are the denomination that did initially provide grant money as we started the first year. So that paid our rent. But we've always been committed to, you know, modern day slavery as a horrible evil in the world. Our book sales. So every book that we have goes to support their work with women and children, primarily around the world, and even in local places. You know, Rockford and Aurora were 2 target communities that we wanted to do some good. We work with also Polaris Project, which is on the Set Free Movement website. So it's a network of contributors. So we give 100% of our book sales to Set Free. This year got a little late, but we would have had a lot of fair trade products available for Christmas buying. But if you want to do that, you can purchase those things through Common Grounds.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions from anybody?
Like we have a question about how do you come up with your drinks and the names of the drinks?
Yeah, so that was one of the turning points for me. Initially, I had hired someone who ran, I don't know if any of you have heard of House Cafe in downtown DeKalb. They were closed. He was doing his own kind of, it wasn't a coffee truck, it was a coffee stand. And he showed me how to run the machines. and he was going to run Common Grounds bar. And then he needed to go back and work for his family. And that was about after we had been open maybe 4 months in 2016. And so then it was one of those moments when I said, what am I going to do? And I started to mess around. I had made one drink and a customer loved it. And that's the barbed wire. And from that point on, I started to figure out combinations, because up until that point, all I knew was white chocolate mocha. That was my one. I was a real simple dude before that. And I created let's see, it was barbed wire, and then it was Irish Dream, which used to be called gingerbread latte, and it just kept happening. So I realized that I've always loved cooking, culinary, I'm a foodie. And it was just a matter of time before that creativity started to kick in. And I think one of the main things we do well, as I've now gone around to other shops, is our use of spices. And that all happened because of my time in India and learning to make chai from scratch. And so I feel like I can do anything with spices.
Wonderful.
And then there's a follow-up question too. What is your favorite drink that you serve?
Irish Dream.
And what is in that?
That one is heavily ginger, white chocolate, and Irish cream liqueur, the non-alcoholic version. And then my follow-up would be Spicy Express, because it's basically my chai mixture added to espresso.
Do we have any other questions?
And I can do a quick tour of the shop while we're waiting.
There is one more maybe before you start moving, Jeff. What's one tip you could share for any of our minority students who would like to be entrepreneurs?
Okay. Well, probably since the pandemic, I really thought about catastrophe, and particularly what happened in Tulsa and what happened in other places, sundown towns throughout the United States. And, we lost something, particularly African-Americans. We lost some of our drive and determination. And I was raised with that. And I want to see, it's back to passion and vision again. People overcame obstacles because they wouldn't, I've overcome obstacles because I don't believe in quitting. I can't imagine taking a shortcut or finding a way that isn't ethical or right, to do something, despite how intolerant and maybe even evil some people are. We have to stay determined to be, above it all. That's the only advice I can give. And I have lots of friends who come from other countries, and they come with usually that determination intact because they sacrifice so much to come to America. You can look at back in history, the Irish, community, Germans who came to America, the same thing. What's not worth it to be successful is something we need to recapture.
Jeff, I'm sure there's been times, probably especially during COVID, that you've wanted to throw in the towel on things. It just seems too hard. It's too daunting. What do you do? What helps keep you motivated? What keeps you going on a daily basis?
Well, I do pray. I'm not as, maybe you say, religious as I may have once been, but I believe in what Jesus taught was praying without ceasing. And to me, that's every moment that you walk and the conversations that you have a prayerful life. And I think that's Francis of Assisi actually that teaches that. And who are you talking to factors into that. If you're drawing in negativity and drawing in words that destroy your heart and your soul, then what good can come of it? So I try to insulate myself from negativity. Sometimes I bring my own negativity, and I have to talk to myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
Art
about
helps a lot too. I should say painting, drawing, staying creative keeps me going too.
and making sure you are surrounding yourself with positivity and
Yes.
positive, inspiring people.
Yeah, people like you guys. Yeah.
So, you're kind, Jeff, you're kind. Did we have any other questions? I've got just 2 more questions for you, Jeff.
Okay, go ahead.
What can students and community members do to help with the goal of turning the cafe into a community center? What can the community do to help out?
Well, so a lot of people ask me for jobs. We're not in a position to hire, but what we need are volunteers. I mean, even if we're not a nonprofit, there's a lot. I've created a schedule where we can have a lot more activities, and I would just love to work with anyone who has a good idea. They can come here and do events after hours. They can help me network, help me, administrate some things that could be powerful and community transformative. So I just need a little more help. Yeah.
Last question from me, and then I think we can wrap things up. What is the work ethic or environment like for anyone thinking of going into entrepreneurship? They see your cafe, it's lovely, you have a lovely vibe, it's a lovely space. What is the grit needed behind that smiling face?
Okay, one of my favorite books, so I went through assessment for both for entrepreneurship and evangelism, because at that point in time, I didn't know what I was going to do, but it's the same plan. And this particular book is called E-Myth. And I can't think of the author right now, but basically he broke it down into 3 categories. You need to, first of all, have a vision, which is entrepreneurship. You're going to need technical skills, and you're going to need a mastery of management. And along the way, I've ebbed and flowed in those areas. Probably with my art background, creative background, I just naturally do entrepreneurial things. I'm a risk taker. I want to try new things. But, I've needed to learn how to manage and to figure out what we can afford to do, what's safer than it is to walk blindly into disaster. So I've had to learn those things. And technically, I was just blessed to pick up coffee making and even having a wide understanding of the coffee industry. It was like, it fit just for me, in a technical sense. And I got lucky to meet some people who could, help me, including our roaster, Jack, who's Barb City Roasters. We roast, locally. So you got to network, but you also, that book taught that if you don't have those 3 aspects working, you need to find people who can help you get those 3 working. There are a lot of businesses that fail because they have people who are only good at one of those things. So that was a big lesson for me, is learn how to find balance.
Jeff, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
sharing your expertise today. Just wondering if we could have a quick tour of the cafe.
Absolutely. I'll walk around. Let's see if I can turn this guy around. Okay. So we're in the back room. The lighting is better back here. It's kind of our children and art space. So there's children's books, and the tables are set up so they can be messy and you can do lots of drawing or painting. This is our bare wall, which is going to get painted, and we're going to make that the open art gallery. So that's a future space. We kind of have our couches and what's not set up here with a TV and books and plenty of seating. People have come in and said, oh, there's lots of seating. That's my friend Ike. He's still here working. He's an entrepreneur too. Owns a hair shop, a barber shop. This is the coffee bar and all the machines. So when I talk about technical, that's as technical as it gets. I mean, all these machines are are, you know, close to 10,000 bucks. I mean, and they need to be maintained to keep the business going. Coffee bar, front counter area, and this is our holiday display. Still working on getting it festive, and there's room for local artists. There's some Pokemon stuff an 8th grader did for us, and our coffee beans, some jewelry, and I gotta show off my daughter's painting. This is Nina Simone, and another young lady named Amy who does fairies. And this is Set Free Movement that someone asked about. And you can come in and pick up one of those cards and find out more about what they're doing. Here's the front window. Oh, and one of the greatest things about our new location is that we have parking, lots of parking, front and back of the building. So we have some great neighbors, and they, you know, they encourage and shop at Common Grounds and tell lots of people about them. Sorry if my face is too close. Put that right there. And that's Common Grounds.
It looks great, Jeff. I apologize. I had a frog in my throat.
Oh,
Here
I'm
we
sorry.
are.
Okay.
The cafe looks wonderful. It looks wonderful.
You need a cup of tea. That's what I need to get for you.
So once Zoom can start passing those through the screen, life will be perfect, right?
Okay. There's some creativity.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for chatting with us today and for sharing your story with us. You're very
Thank you.
motivating and inspiring, and we wish you the best of luck with all of your endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're always looking for more books. If anyone wants to bring books, we collect books, and lots of people donate, and those books turn into help and support for Set Free Movement. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining us today. We hope you will keep seeking out other stories that people have to tell and telling your own story as well. Please stop in and say hi to Jeff at the cafe and grab a cup of coffee. Also, please come see us at the library. We're open to the community as well as to our students. For more information about library services and programs at Kish, you can visit kish.edu/library or email us at library@kish.edu. Thank you again for joining us today. And with that, I think we'll be signing off. And thank you again, Jeff. Wishing you a wonderful afternoon.
You too. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.